Hi, and thank you for joining us tonight. We're going to be looking into beyond your logo. Then, what does it mean for a brand that is able to grow in the African markets? So, Digitech exists to be able to empower businesses, to be able to empower individuals, and make sure that we have bridged the digital skills gap that might be there or that might exist given the era that we're in where being in the digital space matters a lot. So my name is Wamra. I'm a brand digital strategist and also a communication strategist. And tonight we're joined by Michelle and Don, who's the host. So I will let our guests introduce ourselves.
Thank you for the opportunity to be here. I'm hoping that we get to learn a thing or two. My name is Michelle Mudeo. I'm a consultant, a brand strategy consultant, and a fractional CMO. So I help businesses in branding, whether they need to rebrand, whether their brand communicates what they intend to communicate, or they need to rebrand for the next big level. And I also consult on strategy, that is specifically marketing strategies, and I'd say to some extent sales strategy. And a fractional CMO is I embed on businesses whereby I oversee the marketing department, but at a fraction of what you would charge a full-time CMO. So basically, I come in, I help you with your strategies, with your campaigns, I direct your team, I give you reports at a fraction of what you would be charged or the cost of a full-time CMO. So that is in a nutshell about me.
Okay, thank you so much. We're so excited to have you tonight, and we
Thank
hope
you.
this is going to be a very interactive conversation. So I'll just go right into it because we're a bit late and we need to be able to work with the time that we have. Michelle, a lot of businesses when we're talking about businesses and starting a business or a brand, for a long time it's been we need to look for a logo, we need to come up with a tagline, we need to think about the brand colors and all that. But from a strategic point of view, what do you think needs to be done way before we're already thinking about these things? And why do you think that foundation really matters? Michelle, I think we've lost you. Hi, Don. Are you able to get her?
I
Hello,
don't know,
you can
maybe
hear
it's
me?
just
Oh, now we can hear you. Yes, yes,
Okay.
yes. We lost
yes,
you
we
for a
can hear.
while.
So I was saying that a logo should be the last thing that a brand thinks about
Yeah.
because when you just come up with a logo out of perspective or out of what you think the consumer wants, then you get it all wrong. Before you design a logo, you should be able to ask yourself, one, who is this brand for? Who am I specifically talking to? It's not everyone. At the end of the day, when you are coming up with a service or a product, there's a specific person that you're targeting. Number two, what do you want the client, the customer who you're offering the brand, the product or the service to feel after interacting with you? Number three, what is the messaging? Anytime I interact with you, what do people have a perception of your brand? So once you solve these three questions, then that will guide on the color palette. It will guide on how the logo looks like. It will guide on the tagline. It will even guide on the geo targeting of the business. Maybe you wanted a business that is only you're based in Nairobi and that's it. But upon answering those questions, you realize, okay, my brand can serve a bigger market. So after that is solved, after you solve those three questions, then the branding, the colors, the logo is a walk in the park. Strategy is always the brief. Like, how do you start a brand? What key questions do you answer before creating a logo? Before deciding you want a logo that looks that is green or yellow or red. So before you start a brand, those are the key questions to ask, and then the logo should always be the last one because visual anything if you have a visual if you work on the visual before the strategy, then it's just something beautiful but useless. You're not communicating.
Hey, that's interesting. If you work on the logo, it might be beautiful, but you still need to have your strategy right. So Michelle, in a crowded market, we've always said, oh, we are customer centric, we're quite innovative, we're this and this, but you need to have a real point of differentiation. So, how do you identify that so that you can stand out?
So I believe customer centric or innovative is a basic need for any business. It is not a USP, it is not a UVP, whatever else you may define it as what sets you apart. It is the basic customer. If I'm buying from you, then the least I require is a good customer service. If your brand is, look at, for example, some of the brands like Airtel, they have continuously changed their logo, and I believe some of the thinking behind it is the next level of offering, or they're improving their services or increasing their portfolio. So customer service and innovation is the basic. But what really a real point of differentiation starts away from the boardroom. It starts in the market. What sets you apart that a client can, or rather a customer can look at you and say, I'm going for product B, not A, because product B gives me one, two, three. So in a market where, in a crowded market, where everyone is talking of we offer the best customer, or we're not innovative. One question it will ask it, what does our competitor do that? What does our competitor not do that is making their clients come to us? Basically, identify the pain point. You see, a case in point locally, and I hope it's okay to name brands. There's a reason why you'd use the green giants on Wayaki Way and not the red giants on Mombasa Road. There are certain aspects like the convenience of sending money, how clear their network is. So for them, I'd say it is a differentiator, not the customer service or not innovation, because if you look at across these brands, they all offer good customer service and they are all innovative in their own way. So another question to ask is basically another question to ask is basically what can I do better than my competitor? What we may be offering the same service, we may be in the telco industry, but our services are definitely different, or there's a gap where the customer comes to us. Like if it's calls, for example, if it's network, we'd say the green giants offer a clearer network over anywhere you go in the country, whereas the other red brand, it is not as wide as you'd expect. So I'd say in a market where everyone is talking about we offer the best customer service, we are the most innovative. Those are some of the key things that you can look as a brand to differentiate yourself so that you move away from the niche or from the cliche of customer service and innovation.
Okay, wow, that's quite interesting.
And sorry, just to add is differentiation starts away from the boardroom. You will never sit in a boardroom and think, oh, our clients like us because of our customer service or our innovation. So the more you go in the market, you interact with these clients, you hear their feedback, you hear their problems, their pain points. Case in point, there was this time I worked with a brand in the consumer goods, and for them, they knew that the client liked them because of their product. But upon doing a research and going to the market and interacting with the client, the consumer's feedback was reliability. So what we defined, or rather what I defined, that was trust. It was no longer what they thought it was, reliability. It is a trust that cannot be bought just by putting a logo on it, putting a certain color or a certain price. So if you want to differentiate yourself, go to the market, go to the ground level.
So I hear what you're saying is in Kenyan language, uende kwa ground. Ujue ground ni kusema
Enda kwa
nini.
ground,
Yeah,
usikize
okay.
ground.
Okay, quite interesting. Yeah. So now we're talking about African markets, but we do have a realization of Africa is wide. Africa has different cultures, different markets. It's not one consumer, right? So what happens when you're taking a brand from Kenya to the African markets? In that, how do you actually balance going to a different market? Because they're different cultures, right? All these people are different consumers. So we talk about market relevance and all. So how do you actually balance that and still have a very strong brand?
How you balance that is, you see, Africa has 54 countries, and out of these countries, there are different cultures and even microcultures. Like the way, case in point, in Kenya and Nairobi, there is the urban, there's the Sheng, and then there's all these other things down there. So you have to first understand your market in broad. But just so if a brand is moving, say, from Kenya and you want to go to Tanzania, to Rwanda, to Uganda, one of the things I advise brands is the consistency in the value that you offer. The brand identity should be consistent. For example, the promise that your brand promises upon interaction, the value that your brand offers upon interacting, the emotional territory you want. Like, when I interact with this brand, what do I feel? Do I feel excited? Do people want to use me? Do people want to purchase my services? Those things should be constant, at least, because again, you are serving human beings in all these all those territories. So that should never change. But now your brand perception, your expression, how you communicate, which channels you prioritize now changes on case to case basis. For example, uh, again, I always like giving examples of products and brands I've worked with. You find there's a brand in Kenya that works really well in the retail space, in the supermarkets, the Naivas, the Carrefour, the Quickmart, so on and so forth. But moving to Uganda, that brand would really do well in the wholesale aspect. That is wholesalers like Mama Africa, wholesaler in Uganda. So that where the strategy now changes. You cannot apply the retail strategy in Kenya and now say at the end of the day, see, we are still selling to customers. Because when you go to wholesale, the the packaging is different, the pricing is different, the communication is different, even the consumer changes, because now this person is buying wholesale to sell to retailers and you need them to move in bulk. So that aspect changes. So I always tell brands, first, your brand communication, your voice, your value, your promise, they should be consistent. So if it's timely deliveries, if it's consistency in quality, if it's pricing, that some brands promise quality but reasonable pricing, those should be very constant with your brand. But now what really differentiates is what kind of market are you going to? Is it going to change from retail to wholesale? Is it going to change from maybe now B2C to B2B, B2C? So those channels now will determine the strategy that you apply. And it is always good, again, to go to the ground first before you even introduce your product to that new space. If you're thinking of expanding to a new East African country, long before you've introduced it, go in that market. If it's retail, shop, so that you understand from the point of shopping as a consumer, how is the process, what are some of the gaps that you can even come to solve, what are some of the things that you've exaggerated that you can reduce on. Again, you'll understand the ecosystem, who are the big players in this industry, how are the permits that are coming along, is this a product that is fast moving, who are my new competitors even in that new space that you've not really identified. Because one thing with our markets, you'll find even the products that are available in those markets are different. Let's say, for example, Unilever products. You'll find a certain aspect of Unilever products very heavy in Kenya. They are so normal. We are so used to them. Someone else coming from Uganda, from Tanzania, from Rwanda may not necessarily find them here. So if you're going to introduce such a product, is it already there? And if it's not there, if it's Norcube, then you know Maggi is your competitor. If it's, let's say, Rexona, then you know Nivea is your competitor. Is it present in the market? What are the preferences of the consumer there? So I would say is I always go by the rule is one brand with many expressions. The problem is fixed, but how you solve it, how you go and maneuver around it is now determined by the market that you're entering.
Okay, interesting. I hear you talking so much about perspective. So I will we talk about a successful business in terms of how it is perceived in a market, right? And how people respond to this specific business. How should these people measure, or how do you actually tell that the strategy that you're using is actually working? Since we're in Digitech, uh,
Yes.
beyond likes, beyond followers, beyond the visibility, how do you actually tell that the brand strategy that you actually have is working?
Um, One thing about likes and followers, they're the easiest metrics to track. Again, you can always see them. You don't need even a dashboard, or you don't need to get the activity, basically the report, to know what is working or not. But they are also the least useful in understanding whether the brand is actually working or not. Not that are completely useless, that they're not useful, but in measuring the metric whether the brand is working, they are the least of your problem. They're the least of the things that you should be concentrating on, because if you look at it, they're output metrics. You know, they will not tell you, they're not outcomes. They will not tell you, I bought your brand because I like it. They will not tell you, I bought from your online business because of your efficiency. They will not tell you, I bought from your online business because your communication, your messaging is so clear. So when I would say brand strategy, and especially in the digital space, changes when you work on or change for things in awareness. Who is the right person that you are talking to? When you talk about awareness, then the next step should be the recall. Basically, when the category is mentioned, or rather when the category need arises, like for example, if it's coffee, if I need coffee, do I think Mac Coffee? Do I think Dormans? Do I think Nescafe? So that recall of your brand is so good. You've created so much awareness that it becomes a people top of mind brand. And then number three, I'd say, is the preference. So when you give a choice, like for example, if I go to the supermarket and there are all these brands of coffee, do I just go and say I'm looking for Nescafe, and if I don't get Nescafe, I'm not buying coffee? So that brand, creating that brand preference that makes you top of mind, makes you first choice of a consumer. And then advocacy. They are like someone else, like basically if someone is a coffee lover and we've connected in a cafe, or we are just randomly talking and someone wants a drink, you'll say, have you tasted Nescafe coffee? I love it because 1, 2, 3. So for me, I will say the most direct commercial signal that a brand strategy is working is what happens in your sales conversations. Is it shorter sales channels? Like someone is not bargaining so much. This one thing I hate with the Kenyan consumer, or other businesses position themselves for such customers. Bei ya mwisho. I don't like bei ya mwisho conversation, because that already tells me someone does not understand my brand, the value that they don't understand, the value my brand brings for me to charge X amount. If I'm, that's why you'd find someone selling a dress for 1,800, but in another shop that dress is well into 4,500, 6,000. So brand, I'd say a brand should be able now to, the sales cycle should be able to be shorter enough. So such metrics, if the sales conversation is short enough, if the price objection is lesser or none at all, if this brand is being advocated for by an existing client, if the awareness is so much that it's a top of mind brand, then I'd say it shows metrics of a successful branding, and especially in the digital space.
Okay, that's quite interesting. Now I am wondering, Michelle, how do you build that brand where it becomes the first preference? How do you build that awareness that somebody, when somebody thinks about a product or what they're looking for, you're on top of mind?
I'd say many aspects of that branding, and go back to the previous question where we were talking about the brand promise, the brand value, the brand, basically the feeling, the emotion that your brand is associated with. And in this scenario, I like to mention just a few Kenyan brands that I'd say have really given us all that in one package, and we can clearly see why their brands are working. Look at a brand like Bandari Beauty. Bandari has built a community where, first of all, they're very responsive, they're very customer centric, and they're very keen on consumer feedback. So if I bought a toner and it's not working on me, or a moisturizer, and for some reason it's reacting, they're always very keen to, okay, when did you buy it? How did you use it? Just to understand, if you first you understand the brand, but they're very keen to, they don't brush you off, even if chances are upon investigation, I didn't know how to use the product, I used it in the wrong way. So one of the key things that I'd say makes a successful brand is how your brand is perceived. What is the voice that you speak? Do you say one thing and do the other? Do you say, we listen, like a brand will promise, for example, you can return within 48 hours, but then I return within 48 hours and you tell us, we don't return, or we don't refund, or we don't take back products. So how you communicate online and offline should be the same. When I go to LinkedIn, when I go to Instagram, when I go to TikTok, I should get the same brand. Yes, the same brand customized, or rather that is communicating to the TikTok audience, but you can still see the subtle messages that this is the same consistent in each brand messaging. It's not like Uku LinkedIn, you're one thing, arguing on another. On TikTok, you're out there making TikToks and following trends that don't necessarily make sense. So that consistent voice communication is what makes a brand online. Another thing is also the value that you offer. If your products, let's say, for example, you import products from outside, you bring them in the country and resell them. If this happen to change the supplier, then your value that you're offering these products or services should always consistently speak the same language. And if there's a breach of quality, then as a brand, you should be able to speak and tell your consumers there was an error, or at least own it up that something is off when a client or customer comes back complaining. So it's never about whether your logo is the most expensive or the best looking. It's what is the value that you're giving your clients. Are you consistently communicating across everywhere I come across your brand? When I come across your brand and interact with it, how do I leave feeling? What word if I was to describe immediately your brand, would I give it a 5-star rating, or I'll give it a 1-star? So I'd say, especially in the digital space, those are some of the things I'd say would work and to make a brand successful and so to say profitable.
Okay, now speaking about the brand itself as a whole, you have employees, you have all these suppliers and everything. How are you able to actually make sure that they deliver to that extent? Because you've given a quite interesting example of a brand and how they're able to deliver, how they're able to come through for clientele. How do you train, or how are you able to get your employees, your suppliers to actually deliver in that sense?
I'll speak on the employees first. Any employee that comes, or rather is working on your brand, should be able to understand your mission, your vision. They should be able to understand your core values. And this comes in how you train them, how you onboard them. Again, these are more or less processes that now on the back end, like back office kind of things. Because if you're constantly training these employees, first of all, for example, let's say you are a hospital, a pediatric hospital, and you yourself, you say, we take care of your children when you come, this is the best pediatric hospital or clinic to bring your child. But you on the other end, you're not as kind, or you're not as sweet. When you come across a child, you're very standoffish, or you're not patient with this child. So you see, your consumers, or rather your staff, they will learn by your action. I'd say, having worked with staff, sometimes staff learn like children. It's not what you tell them, it's how also you emulate it. So I'd say consistently training for your staff. Let them think, sleep, smell, anything that you want your brand to communicate. That is your vision, your mission, and your core values. They should be top of mind. If you have to write them somewhere, that every morning when they come into the office, it's the first thing that you do. If you have to do monthly or quarterly trainings, that these people understand your core vision and mission and what your brand stands for, then that is what you do. And again, in corporate, we used to call it buy-in, like buying into the vision of the founder. Your staff have to really understand, this is what I need, this is this is where the brand is, this is where we are going, and this is where we want to achieve, this is our summit. When it comes to suppliers, the same thing applies. If, let's say, I'm in garment making, a certain standard quality should be met all the time. And again, you can't be that someone who wants the best fabric, the best silk that is from Egypt or wherever, but then you're not willing to pay the money for it. So once you get a supplier that is also consistent with what you're looking for, you let them know whatever it takes. For me, I always want the best, and you retain it at that. And then again, also working with few numbers, or not few per se one, but have like two, three options, so that again, you're not, if someone is not able to source for what you want, you can always rely on the other person. But they should be able to understand, and by you walking your talk, if you want the best of the best in the market, then can you match it in terms of the price? So That is the only way that your suppliers and your staff can walk your brand vision, your brand mission, your core values, and they can see the bigger picture. What is your north star? What is your summit? Where do you want to get to your brand? So that they are not thinking local, but you're thinking international. They need to be at par. And you as a founder, you as the owner of your business should be able to live that and emulate that on a day to day.
There's usually this tension where somebody has a good talent, somebody who works diligently, but they might be hurting the business when they interact with a customer or rather just a clientele. How do you handle that? Do you let them go? Do you take them for training? What do you actually do about that?
It's simple. I let them go. I let them go because even when I work with people, I hire for attitude. And
Mm.
any founder I'll encourage to hire for attitude. Because sometimes you'd find someone who is very good at what they do. Let's say it's a head of marketing or head of sales. They bring the best sales, but in between bringing that sale, the people that they've either talked wrongly at, the people that have been insubordinate about, even their juniors, the way they talk to them, that such a person, I would say, is a character issue. And a character issue is an inner work. It's not for me to now start training you. I can only take you to so many trainings, hoping that this is the last training that your character will change. But for someone who has a positive attitude, they may not know so much, but they're willing to learn. They may not have had 15 years of experience or 10 years, whatever I was looking for, of experience for them to gain the role, but they're willing to learn. They're taking criticism positively. So such a person, I'll just let them go and replace. I always live by one rule: quick to fire, slow to hire.
Okay,
Yeah.
so hire for attitude, skills can be taught.
Yes.
Okay, in the previous, when you were talking about how you're actually able to bring your suppliers, your employees to be able to follow your footsteps, you mentioned something to do with them thinking internationally rather than locally. So I'd like to know, what do you think brands from the international level come into this African market and are able, what do you think we underestimate as Africans, that other international brands are able to come into the African market and just skyrocket?
I'd say one would be perception. Perception in that brand that is coming in, and also perception and experience. A brand that is international, people would think because the standards there are better, we know our shortcomings, the shortcuts, we want to maximize on the profit margins and all of that. So brands coming from abroad and coming here and doing really well, I'd say perception. People think that not because it's been made outside, the quality is better, the safety guidelines, everything they have done by the book. And again, maybe by experience, some of the brands that we've used locally, you use a brand here and you use that same brand in Europe or in America or wherever you go, and it's worlds apart in terms of the experience. We've had such cases with the sanitary towels. The ones that we have in the country are really not the best quality, but when you buy the same brand outside, the quality is so good. The same to baby diapers. One of the best brands that has really done so well in the country, it had cases of harmful materials in the product. But when you go outside, it's the best brand. It's almost organic, like it's cotton. The feel is different from here. So based on the brands that I've interacted with and based on the markets and some of the brands international and locally, two things always stood out for me. One, there's that perception of because it's outside, it's the best, and then the experience. The consumers will prefer that because they believe the standards and the quality is way better because they have experienced the opposite of that with locally made brands.
Okay, so is there a way that African brands can position themselves to compete with that?
Yes, they can. And I'm not saying all Africans, I should have given a disclaimer. I'm not saying all African brands are not the best. And I'm not saying all international brands are the best, because we know there are some international brands that use Africa as a dumping site, like they're not so good quality. But I'd say African brands, what I've seen us lacking, and I can't speak so much on the manufacturing space because I'm not in that space, but I've also interacted with some locally made, even here in Kenya, brands that are really, really, really good. But we need to position ourselves in the value that we offer. We need to also be keen on deciding or narrowing down to the consumer. For example, you'd find a brand, let me give an example of, say, sanitary towels, but the pricing that you're pricing and the places that you're available, you are communicating two different messages. You are totally upmarket, you're totally uko, upper middle class, and the people who can easily spend without checking the price. But you also want to be present in the lower middle class, these tier two, tier one supermarkets. So I'd say African brands need to define and be comfortable with being told you're too expensive, or why you acting like you're an international brand, because the value I offer is international. The quality I offer is international. So I'd say those are some of the things that African brands and even local brands can look into. Be very keen, or rather narrow down to the specific consumer. And if you are offering, you're walking your talk and you're offering as your brand promise, offer the brand promise that you say, give the value that you say, and don't be afraid to charge it or price it as the brand delivers.
Okay, quite interesting, Michelle. I don't know whether you have something you'd like to take us through that we might have not covered so far.
I think maybe we might have covered everything. Like maybe if there's an question from the audience, but branding, and especially the today's topic of beyond the logo, beyond even your current niche market, there's so much to talk about. There's so much to talk about. There's so much to consider. There's so much that is still untapped and brands do not know. So maybe if we can have a round two and we can talk in depth now into the details of what it actually takes for your brand to go from local to international, specifically now in the African context.
Okay, just maybe to ask a question.
Yes.
Sometimes African brands feel like they have to act like a global brand or an international brand for them to win. But sometimes for you to actually win, you need to lean deeply into you being an African brand. So, which one do you think wins more and why?
Come again.
I mean, sometimes brands feel like we need to look like a global brand, we need to feel like an international brand. But you do realize that sometimes actually leaning deeply into the African roots actually makes some brands win. And so, which direction wins more? Should you be leaning towards owning yourself as an African brand, or try and compete on a global level, acting like a global international brand?
I think authenticity wins all the time. You
Okay.
can only pretend so much. You can only carry yourself so much as an international brand, but your capacity to act, behave, or offer the value has not really reached that level. So I think for African brands, we should be very comfortable in our own skin, that if I'm offering a kitenge, I'm not trying to offer kitenge with a bit of silk and less. Yes, you can be creative about it, but if your authenticity, if you're African brand by origin, by manufacturing, by everything, but you ship worldwide, then own your African roots. Right now, if you look even at the Western markets, they're coming to Africa for inspirations. It's very disheartening that a brand like Kyondo has been trademarked somewhere in, I don't know, Japan, or is it China?
Yeah.
So if a foreigner can see that value and trademark something that is so basic that our grandmothers go to the market with, then what is stopping us from owning our stories, owning our brands? To be able now to say our brands are African made for African people, but can serve a global market. So stay authentic to your brand, stay authentic to your roots. That is the only way that I would say you can grow, even without the stress factor of always wondering, what is the Western market thinking? What do they want? You're serving a market that does not see you. Meanwhile, here at home, you have so much market, and there are Africans across the globe that can also take your brand globally just by buying and taking or traveling with them wherever they go.
Okay, so we have quite a number of questions from the audience.
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna read them out. So one is, when approaching a client about branding, is it better to have an open dialogue with them or just ask predefined questions, especially for those tunataka tu logo kind of clients?
It's always to have a dialogue with the client, and the dialogue should be across, or rather within, what they're looking for. You see, when a client tells you, I import maize, I want a logo, that logo can go so many ways. You can have a logo that has a maize in it, that has a maize field in it. But I'd say if a client only wants a logo, you should be able to identify, what do they want to achieve with this logo? What do they want to communicate? Do they have preferred colors? So never go into, or rather, never take a task from a client that is so vague. They should be able to give you specifics. And I'd say a client that is vague, that is just telling you, we create to tutaongea, tuta discuss, you should run away. That is recipe for, you're just signing up for a headache, because there will always be one more thing to change, one more thing to tweak. And they'll always feel, if we did this as opposed to that, it will look better. Meanwhile, you are the designer. You're the one who can give this creative direction. So when you're going to a client, always have that dialogue, but that dialogue should be specific to, what do you want? What do you want to achieve? Do you have preference in colors? Do you want this? There are some brands that you should also ask, do you want to go international? I've worked with a client that their goal is to get a buyout. So even when we were rebranding, I was rebranding with international in mind, that it's a locally based brand that you want to grow international for a buyout, because also the people that they are targeting for that buyout are international. So when you're very specific, then you are able to deliver, and then you avoid the many back and forth of change this, that, or not change. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Another question would be, if a retail business is looking to pivot to the online marketplace, I believe that this is a business that is already in existence. So would you advise them to go logo first or strategy first, especially for SMEs?
Strategy first. Strategy first, because what, again, strategy should never be vague. I'm assuming this is a brand that knows who they are serving specifically. For example, someone who sells shoes. You cannot sell kids' shoes, female shoes, office shoes, sportwear. You cannot. That's why you find people who sell shoes, they'll sell shoes for runners, or rather sport shoes. Another one will sell kids' shoes, but not every kid's shoe. They'll sell school kids' shoes. So when you're going to the online market, strategy first comes better. You should be able to know who is our specific client to the T. Then now that strategy, based on that, what do you want to achieve? What do you want to communicate? Do you want to acquire new markets? Do you want to be visible? Are we also pivoting to tell people that they can come shop on physical, or they can also find us online? So once those questions are answered and defined, then now the strategy is able to guide on that. Because now under let's say in terms of delivery, if you want your client to know that they can also shop online, under that point in strategy, now you'll be able to define what is the geo targeted, or rather, what is the last mile, what does it look like? If you're based in CBD, are we only able to serve CBD and 5 kilometer radius or 10 kilometer radius? What does that look like for us? Do we need to hire more border riders borders to be able to deliver? Will we have tuk-tuk? Will we have our own in-house border, or it is a service provider with borders that will help us deliver? So once you answer those questions, now the strategy point by point is able to give at a broader base what are the specifics that we need to work on. And again, in terms of priority, in your Gantt chart, you're able to say, so now we want to go online. The first thing is we want to serve a bigger mile as possible. We are going to acquire 10 borders in-house, and you're going to hire 5 external borders. Okay, what is our turnaround time? We are promising people that for 2 kilometers radius, we are going to deliver in 30 minutes. If you are 10 kilometers radius, in 1 hour or 90 minutes, we'll be able to deliver. You need to place your orders within a certain time. Either for next day delivery, you need to have placed by 7 p.m. For the same day delivery, you need to have placed your order, say, by 2 p.m. so that you're able to package and all of that. So there are so many things that guide into what you want, but strategy first. Never venture into new markets, introduce a new product, or even go into a new platform without a strategy, knowing what you want to achieve, what people you're serving, and what are the outcomes you're expecting.
Okay, that's I think that's all that we have from the audience. But I'm just curious about, there's something that you've mentioned, and I realized I was having a conversation and that came out as well. Why is it that we get poor quality of some products, yet we're the ones who are making it? Like, for example, I know of coffee where they export, uh, we export very nice coffee and we end up taking what has been left, really. What can we attribute that to?
Attribute it to gaps in the value, like in terms of what are the margins. Again, you'd find also, if you've not really defined, if you go to this place, what is it called? Something coffee. This coffee along Chiromo.
I'm not sure I know it.
There's a really good restaurant there, and they also make their own coffee.
Yeah.
If you go buy 1 kg of coffee, I think it's almost 1,000, if I'm not wrong. But it's because they've understood the business of coffee. They have defined their clientele. When you go to that restaurant, you can clearly tell, you can class. They tell these are not your average Java kind of, or these other restaurants, mainstream restaurants, because their coffee is really good. They've understood the coffee business. So to answer your question, I usually think is either someone got into it, they're looking to make the margins. So you don't have to really spend time brewing, refining this coffee to the best of its best, because when you go all those steps, then again the margins may not be as good, or the market. So if this especially in the coffee space, I feel that we are also not coffee consumers per se. We are more of tea consumers than coffee consumers. So maybe the market is limited. Again, it could be the margins that they stand to make in terms of the resale value. Because I've interacted with a client that they grow coffee. They grow tea, and one of their biggest market is international market. And the teas, you see the way coffees have grades, tea also has the same grade. I was really fascinated to find out that tea has the same grade, and the best of the best is imported out of the country. What we take here is, it's supposed to be discarded, basically. That is what we make on our day-to-day tea. That is what we drink in the restaurants. So based on that, is, I would say, it's just the value. How much are we making when we sell locally the best, and how much are we making when we import the best, or rather export?
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Michelle, for that. I don't know whether Don has something to say before we close.
No, I think all the questions from the audience have been tackled. So, in the essence of time, we might have to end it there.
Yes.
I don't know if Michelle had any other comment to make.
No, I didn't have any other, but because of time and how broad the branding and beyond the logo is, if we can have part two, that will be better. And this time, just take the audience through what branding is, how you go from the idea to the logo, what steps and questions you need to take in consideration for you to make sure that your communication, your brand values, your logo are all aligned, and that you don't miss the point. Because I'd say the logo is never the important part, it's the least important part. But most business owners start on the reverse. You start with the logo, and then now you start filling in the gaps, and then that's where you get somewhere and you feel, we need to rebrand. We need to change this logo. These colors are not communicating, because you did not answer those key questions that we talked about in the beginning.
Yeah, and I feel like in today's era, we've gone beyond. Our topic actually communicates clear. Where you're looking at nowadays, people are hardly remembering logos. You remember, there is something that makes you remember brand. It's either the person behind or the product behind. So yeah, I think we'll have a part two and get to delve deeper into the topic and just to get to learn more.
Okay. Thank you so much, Michelle, for taking us through that. And for everyone who attended, I am hopeful that you at least took something out of it. And we've seen that we already have what it takes to actually take our brands to the African markets. We just need to make sure that we're giving people quality, and a brand is what people actually say it is, not what you tell people it is. It's actually the consumers who speak to it. Thank you so much. Until next time, have a
So,
lovely evening.
Thank you, and have a lovely evening.
Okay. Cheers.
thank you, everyone. Thank you, Amra. Thank you, Michelle, for your time, and have a good one.
Have a good one too.